The man got on my bus near the end of the route, at a stop nobody used anymore. That was the first strange thing. The second strange thing was that he already knew my name. I had been driving overnight buses for almost 5 years by then. Most people think bus driving is just sitting behind a wheel, but night routes are different. You become part driver, part security guard, part therapist, and part witness to people's worst moments. You see drunk couples fighting, people sleeping in bus shelters because they have nowhere else to go, hospital workers too tired to keep their eyes open, men who get on, ride 3 stops, then get off without ever looking up. But Route 14 was usually quiet. It ran from the downtown transit center out towards the older neighborhoods on the east side, past the closed factory district, a few apartment blocks, and then out to a turnaround near the abandoned shopping plaza. By the time I reached the last part of the route, I usually had nobody left on board. That night, I had one passenger, a man in a brown coat. He boarded at the Old Mill Road stop, which had technically been inactive for years. The signs were still there, but we weren't supposed to pick anyone up because the area had been rerouted. But he was standing directly under the shelter light. No phone, no bag, no umbrella. Just standing there in the rain, watching the bus come toward him. I slowed down out of habit. Then I opened the door. He stepped on and said, "Evening, Paul." My name is Paul. It wasn't visible anywhere inside the bus except on the employee badge clipped low on my jacket, half covered by the steering wheel. I figured maybe he saw it fast. Some people are observant. I said, "How's it going?" He didn't answer. He just dropped exact change into the fare box and walked to the very back seat. That was another thing. Almost nobody carried exact change anymore. I kept driving. The rain had picked up, and the windshield wipers were smearing water across the glass instead of clearing it. The whole road looked like wet black ribbon under the streetlights. I glanced in the mirror. The man sat in the center of the back row with both hands sitting on his knees. Perfect posture. Head slightly lowered, not looking at his phone, not looking out the window, looking at me. I tried to ignore it. I'd had weird passengers before. At the next stop, I opened the doors even though nobody was waiting. Force of habit. The man didn't move. 3 stops later, same thing. Still sitting there. I finally called back. "Where are you getting off?" No answer. I looked in the mirror. He was smiling. Not big. Just enough to show he heard me. I said louder, "Sir, this route ends in about 10 minutes. This time he answered, "I know." That was all. When we reached the final turnaround, policy said I had to clear the bus before heading back downtown. I pulled into the empty lot near the old plaza. Half the building signs were missing. The old grocery store windows were covered in plywood. Grass grew through the cracks in the parking lot. I opened the doors and said, "End of the line." The man didn't move. I turned around in my seat. "Sir, you have to get off here." He looked towards the windows, then back at me. "No," he said. "This is where I get on." That sentence irritated me more than it scared me. I said, "You already got on." He shook his head slowly. "Not yet." I thought he might be mentally ill or drunk, but he didn't sound confused. He sounded calm. Too calm. I radioed dispatch. "Route 14. I got a passenger refusing to exit at the turnaround." Static answered. Then dispatch came through faintly. "Copy. Need police?" Before I could respond, the man said, "Don't do that, Paul." I froze. Not because he knew my name again, because he said it softly from the back of the bus, but I heard him clearly over the radio. I told dispatch, "Stand by." Then I looked at him again. "Sir, what do you want?" He tilted his head. "I want you to keep driving." I should have waited for police. I know that now. But when you drive a city bus at night, you learn how quickly situations can get worse if someone feels cornered. The man wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening me. He wasn't even standing. So I closed the doors and started the return route. I figured I'd drive back downtown where there were cameras, security, and people. The moment I pulled out of the plaza, the man said, "You missed the turn." I checked the route instinctively. "No, I didn't." "Yes," he said, "you did." Then he stood up, slowly. That changed the whole atmosphere. He walked halfway down the aisle and stopped near the rear doors. I could see him more clearly now. He looked older than I first thought. Late 60s maybe. Thin face, wet gray hair combed flat, brown coat buttoned all the way up. He had no smell of alcohol. His shoes were polished. That detail bothered me. Everything about him looked careful. He pointed through the windshield. "Take the service road." I said, "That's not my route." He looked at the mirror, meeting my eyes through it. Then he said, "It was hers." My hands tightened on the wheel. "Whose?" He smiled again. "You remember." I didn't. At least not right away. Then he said, "Girl in the red backpack." And then my stomach sank. 3 years earlier, a teen girl had disappeared from getting off Route 14. I wasn't driving that night, but everyone at the depot knew the story. She worked closing shift at Burger Place downtown and took the last bus home. Security footage showed her getting on. No footage showed her getting off. The driver swore she exited near Mill Road. Her phone pinged once near the old factory district, then nothing. The case was all over the local news for a month, then slowly faded. The driver quit soon afterward. We didn't talk much about it. The man in the brown coat said she got off because he told her this is where she needed to be. I felt cold all over. "Who?" He didn't answer. He just pointed again. "Turn." I don't know why I listened. Maybe because he knew things he shouldn't have. Maybe because part of me had always wondered about that case. Maybe because the rain, the empty road, and the abandoned factory district made the whole night feel detached from real life. I turned onto the service road. The road was narrow and badly lit, running behind old warehouses and chain-link fences. No bus should have been back there. The man returned to his seat. I drove slowly. My radio crackled once, then died. The digital route display above my windshield flickered. Instead, it showed Route 14 downtown. It changed too. Out of service. Then changed again. Mill Road dropped. I stared at it. That wasn't a program route name. The man said, "Almost there." Ahead, the road dead-ended near an old loading dock. There's a single streetlight flickering over the cracked sidewalk. And under it stood someone wearing a red backpack. I hit the brakes. The figure didn't move. For a second, I thought it was a girl. Then the figure turned. It was a man, middle-aged, heavy-set, wearing a transit jacket. My transit company jacket. I knew his face from old depot photos. The driver who quit after Kelsey disappeared. His name was Ron Ellis. But Ron had died the year before. Heart attack, I heard. The man in the brown coat stood again. "Open the door." I said no. His voice sharpened for the first time. "Open the door." The figure outside stepped closer. I could see now the red backpack wasn't being worn. It was hanging from one hand. The other hand held something dark and metallic. A tire iron, maybe. My heart started hammering. I threw the bus into reverse. The figure rushed forward. The man inside the bus lunged toward me. I slammed my foot on the gas. The bus lurched backward so hard he fell into the aisle. The front doors banged as the figure outside struck them with its metal object. I reversed down the service road, nearly jackknifing into a fence, then spun the wheel and got back onto the main road. The man in the brown coat was on the floor laughing, not loudly, quietly, like something had finally gone right. By the time I reached the transit center, police were waiting. Dispatch had lost contact and sent them after I stopped answering. The man in the brown coat was gone. I'm not saying he vanished in smoke or anything dramatic. He was just not on the bus. Officers searched every seat, every corner, even underneath. Nothing. But on the back row where he'd been sitting, they found a folded newspaper clipping. It was about Kelsey Markham. And written across in black pen was one sentence. "Ask Ron about the service road." Ron Ellis was dead, but police searched his old property anyway after I turned over the clipping and told them everything. They found Kelsey's red backpack buried in a shed behind his house. After that, they reopened the case. I never learned anything. Police don't tell bus drivers much, but I heard enough. Ron had been questioned early in the investigation, but cleared because his story matched the route log. He claimed Kelsey exited at Mill Road. Technically, she did. He just followed her after. The man in the brown coat was never identified. No passenger camera footage showed him boarding. At Mill Road, the camera glitched for 12 seconds. When the video returned, I was closing the doors, alone. I stopped driving night routes after that. Still work transit, but daytime only now. Every once in a while, I pass an old bus shelter in the rain and I see someone standing beneath the light. Usually it's just one person waiting. But sometimes, for half a second, I think I see a brown coat. And I grip the wheel a little tighter, because I still don't know who he was. A witness, a ghost, a guilty man, a father, or maybe just someone who waited years for the right driver to finally take the wrong turn. The alarm company called 20 minutes after we locked the warehouse. They said motion sensors were going off in Zone C. That was impossible. I had just walked Zone C myself. Every aisle, every loading bay, every office. No one was inside. At least no one I saw. I worked nights at a furniture distribution warehouse outside Charlotte. Huge building. Rows of box sofas, mattresses, tables, bed frames. Everything stacked 20 feet high on metal racks. During the day, it was chaos. Forklifts, truck drivers, supervisors yelling, radios going. At night, it was just a skeleton crew. Usually 2 people stayed late to finish inventory and lock up. That week, it was me and a guy named Ben. Ben was older than me, mid-50s, former military, very by the book. He checked doors twice, logged everything, never skipped procedure. So when I say we cleared the building before leaving, we cleared it. We started the final sweep at the front office and worked backward. Break room, bathrooms, shipping office, receiving, dock doors, storage cages, zones A, B, C, no one. We turned off lights section by section, set the alarm, locked the employee entrance, and drove out separately. I made it 2 miles before my phone rang. Ben, he said, alarm company call you too? I said, yeah, it's Zone C. He was silent for a second, then said, we were just there. We turned around. That was mistake number 1. Police were automatically notified, but response times for commercial alarms weren't fast unless there was confirmed break-in. Ben said we should meet officers outside and not enter. I agreed. Then we saw the employee entrance door propped open, not wide, just slightly, a piece of cardboard wedged near the bottom. Ben looked at me and said, did you do that? I said no. He said I didn't either. We should have left immediately. Instead, Ben pulled a flashlight from his truck and said, let's just check the front. He had this tone that made it feel reasonable, like we weren't entering a dark warehouse where an alarm had just been triggered, like we were checking whether someone forgot a light. So we went in. The office area was dark except for the red alarm strobes flashing silently on the wall. No siren inside. Just that pulsing red light washing over desks and filling cabinets. Ben punched in his code to silence the panel. The alarm history showed motion, Zone C, motion, Zone C, door, employee entrance, motion, front desk. That last one hit me. Front office. Where we were standing, Ben noticed it too. He whispered, we just triggered that. I said, then who triggered the door? Neither of us answered. From somewhere deep in the warehouse, metal clanged. One loud impact, then silence. Ben raised his flashlight. Stay behind me. Warehouses at night feel bigger than they do during the day. Every sound travels differently. Your own footsteps echo back like someone following. We moved through the main aisle towards Zone C, flashlight beams sliding over racks and stacked cardboard. Nothing looked disturbed. Then we reached the mattress section. A row of box mattresses had been pulled halfway into the aisle, forming a narrow gap between racks, almost like a tunnel. Ben stopped. That wasn't like that before. He was right. We had walked this aisle less than an hour earlier. The boxes had been neatly stacked. Now someone had moved them deliberately. From inside the gap came a soft scraping sound, like cardboard sliding against concrete. Ben called out, "Warehouse security, come on out." No answer. Then a man's voice whispered, "Turn off the light." Ben immediately aimed his flashlight toward the sound. The gap was empty, but at the far end, something moved behind the boxes. Fast. Too fast to identify. I backed up. Ben said, "Out. Now." Finally, common sense. We turned to leave. Then all the lights in Zone C came on at once. Not normal overhead lights. Emergency work lights. Bright white. The sudden light blinded me for a second. When my vision cleared, I saw someone standing at the end of the aisle. A man, wearing a warehouse hoodie. Not our uniform exactly, but close enough. He was maybe 30 yards away, face hidden by the hood. Ben yelled, "Stay where you are." The man didn't move. Then Ben said quietly, "Do you know him?" I said no. The man raised one hand and pointed behind us. I turned. Another person stood at the opposite end of the aisle. Then another shape moved between the racks to our left. Ben swore under his breath. There wasn't one person inside. There were several. We ran. No heroic moment, no confrontation. We ran towards the shipping office because it had a lockable door and a phone line. Behind us, footsteps exploded through the warehouse, not chasing wildly, coordinated, coming from multiple directions. We slammed into the shipping office and locked the door. Ben shoved a filing cabinet in front of it while I called 911. The dispatcher asked what was happening. I said there are people inside the warehouse. How many? I looked at Ben. He shook his head. I don't know. I said at least 3. Then someone knocked on the office door. 3 gentle knocks. Not pounding, not yelling, just calm knocking. A voice outside said, "Ben?" I looked at him. His face went pale. The voice said again, "Ben, open up." I whispered, "You know him?" Ben didn't answer. Outside, the man laughed softly, then said, "You're still checking doors twice?" Ben finally told me the truth while we waited for police. 2 years earlier, the company fired a group of warehouse employees for running a theft operation. They had been stealing returned furniture, falsifying inventory, and selling it out of storage units. Ben was the one who caught them. One guy went to prison. 2 others lost everything. Ben said they threatened him after court, but nothing happened afterwards. He thought it was over. Apparently it wasn't. The voice outside belonged to a former dock lead named Travis, or at least Ben thought it did. The problem was, Travis was supposed to still be in prison. That's what Ben kept repeating. He can't be here. He can't be here. Then the office phone rang. Not my cell. The warehouse landline. I answered without thinking. A distorted voice said, "Tell Ben we found his house." Then the line went dead. Police arrived 6 minutes later. The people inside scattered. Officers found evidence that they had entered through an old roof hatch above Zone C, then used the warehouse itself like cover. They'd been inside before we ever locked up. Maybe hours, maybe the whole shift, watching us, waiting until the building emptied. But here's where it got worse. They weren't there to rob the place, not primarily. They had printed maps of the warehouse, employee schedules, a photo of Ben's truck, a photo of my truck too, probably because I happened to be working with him that night. And inside one backpack, police found a handwritten list. Not inventory. Names. Ben's wife, his adult son, his street address, his church. The detective later told us it looked like intimidation, maybe revenge, maybe worse. Travis wasn't there. He really was still in prison. But his younger brother was arrested outside the warehouse hiding near a drainage ditch. 2 other men got away. One was caught months later. The third, as far as I know, never was. I quit the next week. Ben tried to stay, but the company moved him to days. For months afterwards, I kept replaying that first alarm call, motion in Zone C. If we had waited outside like we said we would, police would have handled it. Instead, we walked right into something planned. That's the part that still scares me. Not the dark warehouse, not the footsteps, the planning. Those men knew the layout. They knew the alarm zones. They knew Ben's habits. They knew he'd come back. That was the trap. And we opened the door ourselves. A year later, I got a message from Ben. Just one picture. It showed the old warehouse after the company moved locations. Empty parking lot, for sale sign, weeds around the fence. On the employee entrance door, someone had spray painted. Checked it twice. Ben changed his number after that. I don't know where he lives now. I don't ask. But I'll tell you one thing. Any time an alarm goes off somewhere I'm not legally required to enter, I stay outside. Because sometimes the building isn't warning you someone broke in. Sometimes it's warning you they never left. The woman pushing the cleaning cart smiled at me like we worked together for years. That was the only reason I didn't question her. She looked like she belonged. Uniform shirt, rubber gloves, badge clipped to her pocket, cart full of towels, trash bags, spray bottles, and mop heads. Nothing about her screamed danger. That's what scares me now. Because the worst people I've seen didn't look out of place. They looked like staff. I worked overnight front desk at a mid-range hotel near the airport. Not luxury, not a dump. One of those places business travelers stay because it has free breakfast and a shuttle every 30 minutes. Night shift was mostly boring. Check in late arrivals, print reports, deal with drunk wedding guests, set out coffee before breakfast staff arrived. Housekeeping didn't work overnight. That's important. Housekeeping arrived at 8 in the morning. Always. The only people scheduled overnight were me at the front desk, a shuttle driver, and one maintenance guy on call from home. So when I saw the cleaning woman step off the service elevator just after a flight crew checked in, I assumed management had changed something without telling me. That happened constantly. I said, "Hey, how's it going?" She smiled and said, "Quiet night?" I said, "So far." She nodded and pushed the cart down the hall towards the first floor bathrooms. That was it. Normal. About 20 minutes later, the guest came to the desk asking for towels. Room 312. I grabbed a stack from the back office and took the elevator up. When I stepped out on the third floor, I saw the same cleaning cart on the far end of the hall. The woman was standing outside room 318, not cleaning, just standing there. Her hand was raised near the door, but she wasn't knocking. I called down the hall, "Everything okay?" She turned slowly, still smiling. "Yes, just checking something." I thought that was odd, but not enough to challenge her. Hotels run on awkward little interactions you learn to ignore. I delivered the towels and went back downstairs. The next strange thing happened an hour later. A man from room 318 came to the desk half asleep and irritated. He said someone opened his door. Not knocked, opened it. He woke up because the safety latch caught. When he yelled, whoever it was pulled the door shut and walked away. I apologized and checked the system. No employee key access showed for room 318. That made no sense. Every master key logged automatically. The guest asked if housekeeping was working. I said no. Then immediately thought of the woman. I checked the service hallway. No cart, no woman. I called my manager. No answer. Then I called the shuttle driver and asked if he's seen a housekeeper. He laughed and said, "At this hour?" That's when I started feeling stupid, because I suddenly realized I had never checked her badge. I hadn't asked her name. I had just let her walk through the hotel because she looked like she belonged. I pulled up the lobby cameras. There she was, entering through the side employee door at the back of the building. That door requires staff keycard. She had one. She came in pushing the cart. I backed up the footage. The car had already been outside, tucked beside the dumpsters. She didn't bring it in from the housekeeping closet. She brought it in from outside. That made my stomach turn. I kept watching. She entered the service elevator and went to every floor, slowly, stopping at certain rooms, never cleaning anything, just standing at doors, listening, sometimes writing something on a small notepad. Then she reached room 318. She inserted a key card. The door opened. Safety latch caught. She calmly closed it and walked away. I called police. While waiting, I locked the front doors and tried calling every room she stopped at. Most didn't answer. Some were empty. One guest in room 226 answered groggily and said everything was fine. Then I called room 411. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Room 411 had checked in earlier that night. Single woman traveling alone. I remember because she asked for a room away from the elevators. Something about the situation felt wrong enough that I grabbed the emergency master key and went upstairs. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened on the 4th floor, the hallway lights buzzed softly. The carpet smelled like cleaning chemicals. At the far end of the hallway, the cart sat outside room 411. I stopped walking. One of the towels on the cart had a red smear on it. Not a lot, but enough. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. Then I heard whispering inside 411. A woman's voice, low, calm. I used my master key. The light on the lock turned green. I opened the door carefully. The room was dark except for the bathroom light. The guest was sitting on the floor between the bed and the wall with her knees pulled to her chest, terrified. The cleaning woman stood near the bathroom holding the guest's phone. She looked at me and smiled, then said, "She said she was fine." I don't remember exactly what I said. Probably something like, "Put the phone down." The cleaning woman didn't move. The guest was crying silently. Then the woman said, "You shouldn't interrupt family issues." That confused me just long enough for her to step toward the door. I blocked her. She stopped smiling then. Her whole face changed. Not rage exactly, emptiness, like the performance ended. She said, "Move." I didn't. The guest suddenly shouted, "She's not my family." That snapped everything into place. The woman shoved past me hard enough that I hit the wall. She ran into the hallway. I chased her to the service stairs, but she was fast. By the time police arrived, she was gone. They found the cart abandoned near the employee exit. Inside the bottom compartment were duct tape, zip ties, 3 hotel key cards, a small knife, 2 stolen wallets, and a laminated employee badge from a different hotel, not ours. Police later explained what they thought happened. She targeted hotels near airports because travelers were less likely to be local, less likely to know staff, and often alone. She'd steal or clone employee access cards, then move through halls pretending to be housekeeping. If challenged, she smiled and acted busy. Most people accepted it. That's the part I still think about. How many doors she stood outside before finding someone vulnerable. Room 411 had been the target because the guest was traveling alone and had paid with a card in her own name. Police believe the woman may have overheard her at check-in. They never proved whether robbery was the only motive. The guest told police she woke up to the woman standing beside her bed, just standing there, watching. When the guest reached for her phone, the woman took it and told her, "Don't make this harder." That line kept replaying in my head for months. She was arrested 2 weeks later at another hotel in another city. Different uniform, different fake name, same cart method. The detective told me something I'll never forget. He said, "People don't question uniforms enough." He was right. I didn't. The guest room 411 sent me a card months later. It just said, "Thank you for checking." That sentence messed me up more than I expected, because I almost didn't. I almost stayed at the desk and waited for police like a sensible person. And if I had, I don't know what would have happened in that room. I quit hotel work shortly after. Now, whenever I travel, I use the deadbolt and latch every time. And if someone knocks claiming to be housekeeping when I didn't ask for anything, I call the front desk. Because danger doesn't always kick in doors. Sometimes it pushes a cart. Sometimes it wears a badge. Sometimes it smiles like it works there.